I know that some in our audience know the finer points of hockey.
The Chris Johnston Show.
We are your friends.
The biggest stories, bringing you inside the game.
What did you hear?
The Chris Johnston Show. Powered by Sports Interaction. Want to bet? What is going on?
Here's Chris with your host, Julia McKenzie.
Part of the game.
For our American listeners, happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day. A day on, not a day off. And before we get to the rest of our topics, where we're going to be talking about Tanner Pearson, the Edmonton Oilers will come up. We'll mention Gino Odjick, the longtime NHL forward who unfortunately passed away over the weekend. And because it's Monday, we will get to Ask CJ questions. But we know that, CJ, you're about a week. It's been a week since surgery, so we got to do these occasional check-ins with you. How are you feeling?
I'm getting better. I'm definitely getting better. I'm doing the daily exercises and being able to use my hand a little bit more. What I don't have is like grip strength. So for example, if I had, and it's my dominant hand that got the surgery done on. So like if I had like a big pot of coffee, I don't have the confidence really to grip it and then tilt it and pour it into the cup. Just because I don't have all that there, but it is definitely feeling better. I get the stitches out in a week and maybe we'll look a little less like a Franken hand then. But you know, given that we're only weeks in surgery, it's actually, I've come a long way, I would say.
So does that mean you have to use your non-dominant hand to pour yourself coffee? Do you trust yourself enough to do that?
Yes. And
okay.
For the first time I can say in my life over the weekend, I opened a bottle of wine with my left hand rather than my dominant hand for the same reason, because it just doesn't feel quite right can't put a lot of mustard into the right hand right now.
Well, that's good, because I was worried that you were going to have to hire someone temporarily to open things for you. I don't know if the SDPN has enough in the budget for that.
No, I'm not. It could be far, far worse. I'm pretty independent with even after the surgery.
Yes.
And I'm back to work this week, bud.
Yes.
2 insider trainings at TSN. I got the big board landing on Wednesday for North Star Bets. So it's back up and running off the IR.
Okay, so since you're going to have the big board up on Wednesday, does that mean we can use that big board up on the Thursday show?
Absolutely. Can't reveal the findings just yet, mostly because they're not entirely solidified. So not keeping secrets from you, but it's not entirely formulated at this point. But by Thursday, we'll be able to talk about it.
You heard it here first, people. CJ's big board will be discussed on the Thursday edition of the Chris Johnston Show. This show is brought to you by Athletic Greens. I literally take AG1 from Athletic Greens every day. I gave it a try because I wanted better gut health. I wanted a better immune system. And I'm trying to eat better and I'm all about health and wellness for 2023. I'm trying to be a little bit more consistent with that. And having Athletic Greens in my life, I think, is putting me in that right direction. I have the bottle, I think it's 12 ounces. You put your water in, you put your powder in. I like to mix it with a little bit of juice here and there, but it tastes great. And it helps just make me feel better and provide so much energy. I really enjoy it. I take it in the morning before doing this, to be honest with you, doing the podcast, any of the podcasts that I do, or getting it onto any article that I'm writing for The Athletic as well. And I feel ready to go, to be quite honest with you. So AG1, that is something that, I know we're doing the ads, but I genuinely enjoy the product. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Go to athleticgreens.com/Johnston, athleticgreens.com/Johnston, to get yourself a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs. It's really cool, really great. A lot of different vitamins in there. Really great for your morning routine. I get that you should probably have it on an empty stomach before you get to eating. Just something that could be a part of your natural daily routine with 75 high quality ingredients that give daily nutrients and long-term gut health support. Again, athleticgreens.com/Johnston if you want a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. This show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. As a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 all depends on the team members you surround yourself with. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experiences to help you achieve your goals. LinkedIn Jobs helps you quickly attract qualified candidates to your open jobs with targeting tools. I know once upon a time, as a young media professional trying to find opportunities, I was definitely surfaced trying to look for opportunities on LinkedIn. So I would imagine hopefully those targeting tools would have me in mind. That's my thinking. LinkedIn Jobs goes beyond resume data by using insights from your job post company and their 875 million member profiles to put your post in front of the most qualified candidates. Identify the most qualified candidates on LinkedIn Jobs and connect with them fast and for free. And LinkedIn Jobs, of course, makes it easy to screen and rate applicants based on your job qualifications, all on one platform. If you're all about trying to achieve your goals in 2023, whether it's getting that big job somewhere, getting a promotion at that job you have now, or looking for an opportunity that will get you towards that path, LinkedIn Jobs will help you go into the right direction. And it's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/Johnston. It's CJ's last name. LinkedIn.com/Johnston to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Did you watch Bruins? Of course you did. The Bruins and the Leafs this past weekend.
Of course I did. It was one of the best games I've seen in a while. Now, granted, I don't catch every game of the schedule, so I'm sure there have been lots of. I actually think this has been a great season. I'm not sure we've really touched on that much, but this season to me has been quite compelling, full of lots of great games. And I thought Toronto-Boston lived up to that kind of standard. You had some lead changes. The Bruins score late in regulation to win 4-3, but it was a pretty tasty preview of what might be a playoff series. Of course, if you look at the standings, it looks like it would have to be a second round playoff series because Boston is lapping the entire league right now and certainly has a stranglehold on the Atlantic Division's #1 seed. So the only way they could face the Leafs, I guess, is if the Leafs fell off down into a wild card position in round 1, or if they got through what looks like the Tampa Bay Lightning in round 1 and face them in round 2.
I'll tell you this. There are a lot of Leafs fans right now who, if you told them that they would play the Boston Bruins in round 2, they would take it. And we all know why they would.
Of course. I think if you're a Leafs fan, you got to take anyone in round 2 at this point. And that division, it's at the top end it's kind of same as it ever was, right? It's 5 or 6 years where you've had these 3 teams all been really good. And you had Florida in the mix last year, winning the President's Trophy. That doesn't have the depth of some other divisions. Like I look at, maybe even the Metro right now, there's a number of teams still jockeying around. We'll see what happens with the Pittsburghs and the Washingtons, the Islanders, those teams that have kind of been falling in and out of the playoff spots. But at the high end, it guarantees it's a pretty tough first couple rounds for the Bruins, Lightning, and Leafs.
I was about to say, this is kind of weird for me as someone who has been adjusted to watching Eastern Conference teams more than Western Conference teams now. I haven't watched the Lightning all that much. Just to see that there's obviously still competitive is not that much of a surprise. But I couldn't tell you what a preview of a Leafs Lightning rematch in the first round would look like for the first time in my life. For what you've seen between those two teams, if the playoffs were to start today and they were to face off against each other, what do you think a series looks like between those two teams?
Well, I would be booking all 7 games. I wouldn't be planning on it being quick. I think it would be similar to last year. The teams themselves aren't that drastically different. Obviously, some different forwards in the bottom 6, some small turnover, but I mean, really what drives the teams is the same. And last year they played 7 games and the final score cumulatively was 24-23 for the Leafs. So, and they lost one more game and, a couple of those games went to overtime and all that stuff. So, I think it would be very tight again. I think that, the goaltending would be maybe the biggest change this time around. there's still question marks about, how would Matt Murray handle that kind of series? Obviously, he's had playoff success in the past, but we know he's also had a long injury history. So I think that, there's some wild cards there, but, we've got a long time. This is the unfortunate part of, I don't like this playoff format. I've hit that drum.
I don't like it either.
I've banged on that drum about 1,000 times over the course of our show, but I will say what I really don't like too is it's already locked in, right? Like it's more or less, unless something weird happens, it's basically Toronto and Tampa in round one. Now there's still something to be played for because, which of those teams finishes second in the division and has home ice is still very much up for grabs. But it's hard to imagine either Buffalo or Detroit or someone coming and catching them from behind. And I don't see either the Leafs or the Lightning being able to put together a strong enough second half to make up 10 or 12 points on the Bruins. Again, everything is possible. Maybe Boston completely falls apart, but you've just seen no reason to believe that. They already have 70 points in the standings. It's not even the All-Star break. So, I just think that it's unfortunate we have a long time to conceptualize what this looks like. There's still a couple more meetings between Toronto and Tampa, so you'll get a look then. But I think it's just going to be it would be a tense, tight series, and I don't think either team's winning it easily, put it that way. I think it would be a real knock them down, drag them out kind of, best of 7.
I'm good with that because considering how entertaining that first round series was, like genuinely, and the Leafs were right there. They just needed one more win. They didn't get it, but it was a very entertaining series. You could argue it was probably one of the most entertaining series up until the conference final and the Stanley Cup final with what they produced. So if we get it's likely we're going to get that rematch. I'm not going to complain that much come playoff time. We'll see how that goes.
The one guarantee though, for all I can, bitch about the way the format works, the playoffs always deliver, and round one in particular delivers. So, the NHL does have something going right there. I just think that there's probably a more fair and better way to seed the playoff teams. But truth is, if you're going to win the cup, you got to beat some good teams. You got to beat everybody else. And so that does remain true.
Last thing, just before we get to sports interaction with David Bastel, any thoughts on John Tortorella and the banning of iPads behind the bench?
Well, sometimes the jokes write themselves, right? The headlines write themselves in this case. And I think if you only see that on Twitter, if you only see the snippet, it gives you very much old man yells at cloud vibes. But when you actually listen to what John Tortorella had to say about why he was doing it, I do think it makes some sense. He just felt that his players weren't doing a good job of understanding the flow of the game, that they get off the ice after a shift and they'd kind of be engrossed in whatever they're looking at from their previous shift on the iPad and not, having a lot of situational awareness and there's some specific details or games that he could point to. And so he's gotten rid of that because he kind of wants his players to pay more attention and to be into the game. And, you look at the Flyers right now, they've actually won 7 of 8 heading into a game in Boston on Monday afternoon. So, they've been going quite well. And I know big picture, they're kind of in that mushy middle, lost that C a little bit directionally, but it's John Tortorella's job to get the best out of the players, get them to win games. And they've been winning games. They just can't watch the iPad in real time the way 31 other teams' players are doing.
Currently, Travis Konechny, it was the biggest offender of the iPads, just constantly looking at it just to see what he had done in the past. He was the biggest offender, according to John Tortorella, from what I read in the Athletic article on this story.
Well, he's doing something right. He's scoring like a goal a game these days, it feels like. So, again, look, Torts, he's kind of a meme, right? Like he leans into who he is. I can tell you that he would do that though, really believing it. Like I don't think he's trying to be a Grinch here or trying to be, I don't think he's trying to be even hard on his players. I think he's trying to send a certain message, but, yeah, when I saw that scroll through my Twitter feed, I was like, oh man, there's always something in Philadelphia, right?
There's always something. And it's not just the sun. I will tell you that. All right. Time to bring on David Bastel for sports interactions. You can bet that segment. Let's do it.
You can bet that with David Bastel. Brought to you by Sports Interaction. Get in the action and make a play. 19 plus. Please play responsibly.
Welcome to You Can Bet That with David Bastel. Remember to hit up sportsinteraction.com/SDPN for all of your gaming needs. I happen to live in a city that is part of the Pacific Division in the National Hockey League, and we have some lines out already for who could win of the Pacific Division. And Vegas is the betting favorite, but the Seattle Kraken sneaking up there, looking pretty good in second place.
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting because I was looking at some of the notes this morning, guys, and I was thinking, okay, let's do something a little different because every single I'm going to say month they redo the lines because teams go on 10-game winning streaks, they go on 10-game losing streaks, they look at future schedule and so forth, and I list 5 teams that legitimately could win this division. And it's pretty wide open. And then after that, the line is kind of drawn already. You could already put the X's beside elimination, in my opinion. But I mean, I'm looking at the LA Kings right now, CJ, pretty much in this conversation, a couple points back, and they're paying 9-1. I mean, if you're circling a value bet, maybe that's one of my opinions. I don't know about you guys, because I think you can make some opinions on 5 teams, like I mentioned.
Well, I just want to know who's going to get goaltending. The Pacific is like a goalie graveyard, it feels like, with due respect to a couple of good performers in the division. But yeah, I mean, I would be probably more inclined to go with LA, but they've just had such trouble getting consistent saves. It's a toss up, and I think that's what makes it such an interesting division. It certainly hasn't gone the way I would have guessed at the start of the year.
Yeah. To your point about goalie graveyard, Seattle, you having Martin Jones, we've raved about him a couple of times. Logan Thompson is a veritable rookie of the year candidate. Those are 2 goalies I'm sure we did not think would be talked about at all in that conversation at the beginning of this year, especially a division that has guys like Jonathan Quick or Cal Peterson or Jacob Barkstrom or Jack Campbell, who signed that deal out in Edmonton, and Stuart Skinner, Thatcher Demko, John Gibson in Anaheim, even though Anaheim's a bad team. So it is very interesting with regards to goaltending in that division. But yeah, the lines are there for who could be winning in the Pacific Division. And we have to mention football because we do like football here. Siege, are you nervous? You nervous? Dallas Cowboys against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers tonight.
I'm nervous. On Sunday, I got a last minute note from a friend offering me a ticket to the game.
Oh,
if I was willing to fly down to Tampa, and I didn't bite. Not just because of the price of it, because it would have been a costly, quick last minute decision, but I'm that nervous that Tom Brady is going to do something to break my heart.
Oh my God. DB, tell us who's the favorite for that game.
Well, the Dallas Cowboys are the favorites, slight favorites. It's 2.5-point favorite. So basically we're looking at, a field goal type game. Some of the bigger stats, of course, and I know, CJ, you know all about this. Tom Brady hasn't lost to the Dallas Cowboys. I'm sure you're getting sick of people like me telling you this. Guess what? They can do it on one night because that's all it kind of takes right there. You look at it too. The Dallas Cowboys have clearly had the better season than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you know what? Almost won that division in a very good East division where Tampa Bay kind of rolled into it. And if you look at what they have to offer in that division, it's a mess, right? So they were the best of the least, and they host the game tonight. So anything can happen. It's kind of fun to watch playoff football on Monday night because we don't get to see it too often. It just kind of started within the last couple of years, and I look forward to it.
I have a stomach churn, and we're about 12 hours from kickoff. So.
Well, the only thing I can say to that is that scared money don't make no money. Well, we'll see how that goes with Monday Night Football. Don't forget to check out sportsinteraction.com/SDPN for all the best odds before game, in game, and the best props. Again, sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. You had an opportunity to go watch an NFL playoff game featuring your NFL team, the Dallas Cowboys, and Tom Brady, and you said no? What?
Okay. Well, first of all, I live in Toronto. The NFL playoff game is being played in Tampa.
Okay.
3.5-hour flight. I was given the opportunity to go. I'm looking right now at the text at 5:40 p.m. on Sunday night for a game that was being played on Monday. So I would have had to really rearrange my schedule. I mean, I still have work to do this week too, and get there. And then the kicker is, and I'll just read the text and see how, if you just got this text from one of your buddies, we've got an extra ticket for tomorrow if you're tempted, but they're $1,100 each. LOL. So
that's pretty pricey.
I'm not going to lie. Price was a factor. Like it wasn't just, oh, you can go to a game. It was like, you have to completely upend your life on a moment's notice, pay for a plane ticket, figure out a hotel. And then on top of that, just to get in the door, it's $1,100. I mean, I love the Cowboys, but there is a point where that doesn't make sense.
Okay, that's fair. Because I don't know. In my mind, like if I'm getting a text from my friend being like, "Hey, I got this ticket left over," like some kind of accommodation has to be taken care of. Like I'm not made of money and I don't have all that type of time. I will concede on that front. That being said, like if this was like the NFC Championship game or the Super Bowl, like you have to seriously consider that, even if it does upend your life.
Well, I seriously considered it even as is, because these opportunities don't come around too often, right? I mean, I've been I'd say about 20 years into like my hardcore Cowboys fandom, where I basically watch every game and certainly follow along. And I mean, they really haven't been in that many playoff games over that period of time. They've won next to none, unfortunately, painfully. And quite candidly, I will tell you, I fully expect them to lose on Monday. Like I'm in my defeatist stage of fandom with the Cowboys. Like I want to believe, but I don't believe. And so that was like the other thing on my mind is like, in addition to the inconvenience of this, the incredibly high cost, I might be doing all that to go there for like 3 hours of misery.
But you also get to watch Tom Brady. Does nothing for you.
I've got blinders on, man. I'm there to watch the Cowboys. There's no one on that other team that they could do anything that's going to impress me or make me happy or be like, I guess you're right. It could be, who knows? This could be his final game in the NFL, perhaps. I don't know what his plans are, but it begs a question. What would be the price like for any of the teams you love most? Like, and we're talking a game with some consequences as this one has. Like, what is the max price you would pay to go?
Yeah.
And what team would it be? Because I guess that probably frames it as well.
So, like, I think the team for me, it's got to be Manchester United. So, like, I'm watching like a Champions League, not that they're in the Champions League right now, but like a knockout round Champions League game at the Theater of Dreams. Shoot, I got to account for a ticket. I got to account for a plane ticket. I'm not going to sleep on the street. Like, okay, so like,
to keep in mind,
I got to pay at least $1,000. That's a wreck.
But what would you pay for the ticket into the game? Because at least if you're flying to England, like you're in England, like you can have a little trip out of it, right?
Yeah, exactly. You're in Europe. Yeah.
So you're getting something else for the money, for the plane ticket money. But like for the game itself, like what's your number? Like I think I would go over $1,000. Like $1,000 is about my number in my mind.
Like, and that's for one ticket. Yeah.
I know. And like the games, like keep in mind, we've all watched enough sports. Like sometimes sporting events suck. Like there was a game over the weekend, right? Didn't someone won 7-0?
Yes.
Like you could go to a game and spend a lot of money and watch your team lose 7-0. Like it happens.
You could also go to a game and see your team be down 27-0, maybe leave partway through only for them to win. After the fact.
You know what you could also do? You could also go to a game, as a younger Chris Johnston once did on his own dime, and see the bat flip from Jose Bautista. Literally one of the coolest moments of my entire life. Like I'm not exaggerating. One of my favorite things I've ever done. There's so much tension, and so like that's and I'm sure that ticket wasn't cheap because it was a playoff game at the time. For the Jays, like World Series, I would spend $1,000. It's funny. I actually had World Series tickets last year. Of course, they didn't get beyond
they didn't make it.
The wild card round with Seattle, but I had bought tickets like into the World Series, I think, or maybe the ALCS. Anyway,
I believe that because you're a diehard Jays fan.
But they weren't $1,000. But don't listen to this, whoever sets the Jays ticket prices and targets me with your ads. But
also, if you're paying $1,000, and I don't mean to spend too long on this, but like if you're paying $1,000, where are you sitting? Because I'm not paying $1,000 for like nosebleeds.
Well, my impression,
that's probably what it's going to be at.
I think the football ticket that was offered to me was like on the 50-yard line. Like I think it was like
that's insane.
I think it was a really good ticket, but I mean, I said no. I expect the Cowboys to lose.
That's really good.
That's part of this.
Like, you making it think as if it's like, oh, like I'm sitting like high up in the nose, like right by the cannon. I'm gonna like my ears are gonna bleed on the 50-yard line. That's like a once in a lifetime experience.
I know, and I said no. I mean, here's the other thing: if
this ends up being the game of the year, I'm letting you know.
Okay, but that's fine. I'm still gonna watch it, right? I've got a nice, comfy seat on my couch. I got a big screen. It's Monday night, so it won't be too crazy, but maybe I'll mix myself a drink or something, just feel nice and toasty and just watch the Cowboys win. Like, my point is I'll still enjoy the game. Now, it won't be near as good of experience if it's an awesome game and the Cowboys win and my buddy who is going to the game. But yeah, anyway, it's an interesting question. If the game was in Dallas, I would have thought harder because I really, 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 really want to go to that stadium and I haven't had the chance yet. I've driven by the stadium in Tampa. I don't know. It's just a big football stadium, but Jerry World looks like something else in Dallas. Like that's on the bucket list. Like I got to take care of that next season. Like when the schedule comes out, I got to figure out, it's just hard because the NFL season overlaps with the start of the NHL season. And obviously we're working and all that, but anyway, good hypothetical question, but I think I would get to $1,000. Like I could have twisted myself into the $1,100 price, but then you're still looking at probably another $1,000 for the flight. And as I said, like we wouldn't be recording this podcast right now. I'd probably be on a plane. Like, I don't know. It was not a convenient.
Also, I'll say with the flight, it depends on when you book. Like in this particular instance, if you're doing a 1-day turnaround, like hell yeah, like that flight's going to be $1,000. Like,
well, and plus you don't get to enjoy Tampa. Like it's not like I'm getting literally just waking up early, flying there, going to the game, having fun, and then flying right back and then like having insider trading tomorrow. And yeah, it would have been it would have been too crazy.
So you're just a responsible adult.
Do you know what I am doing though?
What?
I haven't even told you this, I don't think.
No, what are you doing?
I'm going to Montreal this weekend.
Oh, you're going this weekend?
This coming weekend, and I'm gonna sit in the crowd too. Like bought a ticket and everything.
I'm going this is a long well, actually, you know what? I'm going to spare the details, but I'm going to Montreal at the end of the month. I was originally supposed to go somewhere else, but then that fell through. So I'm going home instead, but I'm going to be going back home to Montreal like much later.
Well, that's nice. I'm glad you'll see your friends and family. But yeah, I'm actually going. I am spending my own money to go to a sporting event in the coming week. It's just not going to be the Cowboys Bucks playoff game.
Well, you're the Montreal Canadiens. I mean, at the Bell Center. I mean, there's
I've said it, man.
No better place.
It's like going to the Vatican if you're Catholic. It's an experience. If you're a real hardcore hockey fan, you should go watch your team play, or any team play. The Canadians, especially, I think on a Saturday. Like I think there's just something nice about. Yeah, so it's really just something to do for me. It's January, kind of in like bundled up season, not leaving the house too much. So I was trying to force myself out, go see some friends down there, maybe see Arpin Basu, our buddy.
Tell him I say hi. Tell him I say hi.
Anyway, we should probably talk about hockey. I guess I'm totally like always. I just derail us with these like random things that go on, but.
And we never complain about that because it always leads into fascinating discussion. So I'm not even mad about the fact that we've delayed talk about the Vancouver Canucks and whatever the hell is going on with Tanner Pearson. I'm telling you, man, the Vancouver Canucks, man, they've just been this tire fire that just keeps on spinning. It's like the league's best soap opera by far compared to any other story going on. I thought the Philadelphia Flyers would have been that team this year. The Vancouver Canucks have been that team this year. And for those trying to catch up with what's going on with Tanner Pearson, and please fill in the details that I may have missed. Tanner Pearson, forward for the team, has not played since November 9th, I think against the Montreal Canadiens when he hurt his wrist. Since then, he's been due for multiple wrist surgeries, and it seems as if his career is in doubt, let alone the idea that he could even play next season. Quinn Hughes goes to the media and says that his injury wasn't handled right. For those who did notice online, when the media availability happened with Quinn Hughes, yes, the Vancouver Canucks did cut out that part of his media availability from the video they put out on Twitter. Canucks president Jim Rutherford wants to meet with stakeholders to discuss what's going on. The NHLPA might get involved. There's a lot of crap going on in this situation. Again, if there's any other detail I've missed, please feel free to fill in that detail. But like, it just seems like it's a mess.
Yeah, and it's an awful situation for a veteran player who spent a long time in the league. I mean, this was a 4 to 6 week recovery timeline that was given when he was injured, in early November. And here you are in January talking about the end of the season, having some question about next season. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that this injury or this series of issues is going to heal and recover in a fashion that allows him to play next year. It's not a guarantee at this point in time. And, I think the team is doing the only thing it should do, which is figure out how this happened, because clearly it's not even at this point. I don't think we can't assign blame here. Certain medical procedures that are done on hockey players are very routine. Like, yes, it's this break. This is what the recovery looks like. Certain other things have more nuance. In this case, you're talking about a player too that's had some infection get in after the surgery as well. And so, I think that Jim Rutherford's doing the right thing by trying to, figuring out what went wrong. You certainly don't want to see any repeat of this. You also have to make things right with Tanner Pearson. And I think that's where the NHL Players Association comes into the discussion. Obviously, his agent, Joe Resnick, is, lobbying on his behalf and making sure his rights are protected. One thing you may not realize, Julian, is that players actually do have an ability to get a second opinion or a third opinion in the CBA. So if I'm not suggesting that that's what happened here, that he didn't go do that or something, but a player's right to how they receive treatment is protected by the league's rules. And so, I think at this point we'll have to just see what comes out of this. But it's you're right. I mean, it has nothing to do with the other issues in Vancouver, unless I guess you want to draw a line between a lot of other things. But I think it is just, it's been a real shitstorm there. I mean, what else do you call it? And, it does seem as though Quinn Hughes drawing attention to it is ultimately what, got it to the level where team president Jim Rutherford was aware of it, based on the comments he made to Ian McIntyre. So, that in itself almost speaks to, it's a little surprising that, this wouldn't have been run up the chain of command more. I mean, I get that the team president maybe doesn't get daily injury updates on every player that's out. But, something like this is, it's gone horribly wrong. And, just want to wish my best to Tanner Pearson, because we're talking about a human being in the middle of this. And it sounds like he's been through hell and back, to be honest.
Yeah, it does sound like that. And to your point, though, about the fact that it's not necessarily tied to all of the other issues that have surrounded the Vancouver Canucks. It is, however, one thing atop that heap, because literally almost since day one of the season, there's something going on with this team. If they're not playing well, JT Miller's doing something, or Bruce Boudreau's name is being slandered in the mud, with potential replacements being discussed almost every week. It's and I hate to sound like a broken record. You're absolutely right. It is a shitstorm. That's what it is. Well, you've said that so many times.
And look, at every organization will talk about culture. Every leader within an organization will throw that word around. I think what they mean when they say that is that there's a certain way that we do business. There's a certain way we handle everything. There's a certain professionalism to how things are done. It doesn't feel like they've reached that level on a consistent enough basis there. And I'm not sure if that ultimately falls at ownership's feet. Obviously, Jim Rutherford, really respected hockey man. Someone who's been around the league a long time, has a great reputation. I've dealt with him a lot over the years. Personally, I would be hard for me to imagine that it's all on his feet. But unfortunately, I suppose when you wear the president's hat and you're at the top of the food chain, so to speak, you're going to have to maybe take responsibilities for some things that are maybe even a little bit beyond his purview, because everything is supposed to be in his purview. But yeah, it feels like they really need a reset. I don't mean that they necessarily have to clean out the front office again, because they've just done that a year ago, but it's
been a year.
It's been a year, but it feels like they're no further ahead. Right. We're not even talking about the on ice product. But it just seems as though something isn't right there. And I would suggest that you got to fix that before you're going to fix anything that happens on the ice. I mean, it all does go part and parcel together. And that's not to say organizations that are really efficiently run. I'll look at, say, like the Tampa Bay Lightning, been to 3 straight Stanley Cup finals, have a top end general manager, have a universally respected owner, really tight business operation. It's not to say that something couldn't, the mistakes could happen anywhere or issues could still arise, but I think they become more pronounced when there's instability, and it just seems like an unstable place, Vancouver.
How much different do you look at the Vancouver Canucks if they were going through all the troubles they were going through on and off the ice, but they found themselves firmly in the Connor Bedard sweepstakes, as opposed to that mushy middle we think about with the Philadelphia Flyers, for example?
I think it's different, right? I mean, everyone knows what's going on in Chicago this year. And, that's an organization that's been through its own issues, we'll call them, in the last couple of years.
That's putting it lightly.
But they've made a conscious decision to be in that sweepstakes, to, rebuild their team, to trade away players. And sure, they're losing a lot of games. I know attendance is down. It's the biggest rink in the league, or second biggest rink in the league, but they still sold out a game recently. And I think it's easier to buy into the plan when you see a plan and when you see it being executed, and when everyone sort of understands what's at play there. I think the same would be true of the Canucks. I guess what's different about Chicago and Vancouver is Vancouver has better players in the primes of their careers, or in even the early stages of the primes of their careers, that were already in house. And so maybe it's a little harder for them to contemplate that rebuild, because you still have Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson, and you have the makings of something that might be something. So it was probably harder to stomach the idea of going right to the bottom of the standings. But ultimately they might end up there anyway. I mean, that's still a possibility. I mean, who knows? I wouldn't even want it. We don't know. No one has a crystal ball as it is, but I would not want to predict what's going to happen next in Vancouver. I mean, it feels like there's a big story every other week, as you mentioned, and some new controversy. And, they're still down to 6 weeks now till the trade deadline. And their captain, who's already got 30 goals on the year, is not signed beyond the season, and probably not signing, and probably has to be traded. I mean, there's still some big shoes to drop here in the near future for the Canucks.
Tune in next episode of the CJ Show to figure out what the Vancouver Canucks do next. All right, let's move on to another Canadian team.
I felt like that was the end, but I was like, hey, wait, we still got more to go.
No, we have plenty more to go on this Monday edition of the CJ Show, including the Edmonton Oilers, who may get Evander Kane back in the lineup. But does that mean they have to get creative with how they'll accommodate his $5.125 million AAV hit?
Yeah,
how do you see it?
Well, the great news for Edmonton is that Evander Kane sounds as though he's imminently ready to return, perhaps as early as Tuesday, but certainly I would say in the coming days, it appears that that's what's going to happen. And when that happens, they will have to clear some space out. I mean, there's a couple things they can do. They can send some players down that are waiver exempt. They can carry a 20-man roster, which is the minimum. But, I think one of the other things that they've been exploring is seeing if there is somewhere that Jesse Puljujarvi might be a fit for another team. And, I'm not sure how much traction they've made there. Unfortunately, it's been a really difficult year for Puljujarvi. You'll recall he made some candid comments to a reporter back home in Finland about his struggles to create offense. Has not produced up to the level that was certainly expected of him when he was a 4th overall pick back in 2016. I think his career is kind of stalled out a little bit. But that's something to keep an eye on, is that it's not to say they have to move Puljujarvi as part of activating Evander Kane. I think there's other ways they can create the space that aren't quite as drastic as we might say. But, I think that they've been canvassing the league to see if there's a market to unload that player. And, they're going to have to do some sort of roster tweaking. So we'll keep an eye on the waiver wire and see if anything comes of the Puljujarvi talks.
But generally, even beyond Evander Kane and trying to bring him back into the fold, shouldn't the Edmonton Oilers be in a position where they should be doing something ahead of the deadline, considering the fact that they're fighting for a playoff spot with Calgary, considering the fact they have the 2 best players in the league, and they should be doing everything they can to maximize their cup chances? Like, we kind of talked about this the same way last year with goaltending, and they ended up getting Evander Kane, and it actually ended up working out for them. But how do you see it with Ken Holland and the Oilers and what they should be doing ahead of the deadline?
Well, I think that they'll get a defenseman, likely a left shot defenseman. I know that they've had their scouts out, following a handful of guys that they've identified as potential candidates. That feels like a move that happens much closer to the deadline for the cap ramifications, because largely those players that I'm referencing, there's other teams that are going to be interested in as well. And so if you're selling one of them, you might be waiting to see the market more fully form before you're making a trade. But I think that they will try to improve a little bit defensively. Obviously, one player, alone won't do that. But I think they're going to do what they can. And look, they have the same problem I could say of a lot of teams with high ambitions, is they don't have the ability to do a whole lot when it comes to drastic roster changes. I think adding Evander Kane back will, let's give him some time. He had a significant injury, if you recall. He had his wrist stepped on in a game in Tampa, and so might take him some time to get his hands back, so to speak, and feel comfortable handling the puck to the degree he normally does. But it's still a big addition getting him back after a couple months on the sidelines. And I don't see them making any home run acquisitions beyond that, but we'll see what they do. I think that they would consider some players that aren't just rentals when they make a deal ultimately for a defenseman. So that, might bring in, it's a name that's been linked to them so much, but Jacob Chychrun, I think, makes some sense for the Oilers. I don't know that they have, complete on their end. I'm not sure everyone with a stake in that decision sees it the same way. And obviously you're talking about a pretty high acquisition cost there, but yeah, the Oilers they're going to, I would say confidently they're going to make a trade. They can't make 3 or 4 or anything like that. I mean, I don't see anything that drastic on the horizon for them. And if anything, I think they're going to lean in maybe a little bit to the fact that they tend to win games 5-4. They're not built the way other teams are, but they also have 2 players at the top end of the roster that probably no other team can quite match in terms of their offensive abilities. So, that's sort of where the Oilers are at. I still think they could win it all this year, even though it's been kind of an up and down year. It hasn't gone the way everyone would like. I mean, just seeing what Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl did for a couple of rounds last year, if they can repeat that, and of course they can, I mean, that they're going to be a dangerous out no matter who they play.
Absolutely. I mean, teams kill for 1 Hart Trophy candidate. Imagine having 2, like the Edmonton Oilers do. That's just what it is. But we will obviously be updating the Edmonton Oilers file as we make that race towards the trade deadline. One more thing before we get to Ask CJ, we should mention the unfortunate passing of Gino Ojic, the longtime NHL enforcer. Played in Vancouver for a number of seasons, played with the Islanders, played with the Flyers, spent the tail end of his career with the Montreal Canadiens in his hometown. Unfortunately passing away on Sunday due to a heart attack at the age of 52. Any thoughts on Gino?
Yeah, I mean, I remember him a lot from when I was a kid. Was a big personality player. Rode sort of shotgun with Pavel Bure. Always seemed like an unlikely couple, so to speak, but 2 good buddies. Back when Pavel Bure, for a time, even for a kid growing up in the East, and was the most exciting player in the league for a couple of years in Vancouver. And yeah, I remember Gino, being sort of his protector, a different era of the sport, and just always seemed like a really kind guy, really embraced Vancouver. I think was one thing that made him so popular and beloved among Canucks fans, is he just seemed like there was nowhere else on earth he wanted to play. And strangely enough, I have an uncle who has a cottage in a place called Maniwaki in Quebec. And that's, I believe, right from where Gino was from. So
yes,
I never met him personally, but have fond sort of remembrances of him as a player, and just seemed like a wonderful guy. And 52 is just too young to go. So I'm sorry for him and his family that they've, had that loss.
Absolutely. I echo those sentiments as well. May he rest in peace. Okay. We will now move on to some questions for Ask CJ, as we normally do on the Monday edition of the show. We take in questions off of Twitter. We take in questions off the SDPN Discord as well. And they could literally be about anything. They could be about hockey. They could be about food. They could be about, I don't know, what tailor CJ has for his suits. I don't know. What's your suit budget?
I don't have one currently. So
you don't have a suit budget.
It's whatever I'm willing to pay.
Okay. All right. We get whatever you're willing to pay for the suits and not for a wild card weekend NFL game with a 1-day turnaround in Tampa Bay.
I can't be going to Cowboys games when I got to be getting some nice suits for trade deadline.
100%. Think you know what way it's going to go? Make your bet at Sports Interaction. When the puck drops, Sports Interaction has you covered pregame, live betting on all major sports, and prop bets. Want to bet? Head to sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. 19 and over. Please play responsibly. Let's take in this first question from Steve Dan on Twitter. Not to be confused with Steve Dangle. Is it just me, or is the officiating getting worse? Pretty broad question.
I don't know. I get it, but I feel like this topic is evergreen, right? Like, it's not like last year everyone was saying, "Oh, the officiating's perfect." And if you love one team, whatever team that is, you could probably focus in on their games really closely as you do and find instances of missed penalty calls or mistaken situations, and then see that on Twitter, and it becomes its own self-fulfilling prophecy. I don't know that it's worse. Honestly, I don't believe that it's worse, but mistakes are going to be made. It's a high-speed game with rubber on ice, and human beings are trying to adjudicate it. It's not making excuses for it. It's not saying someone isn't going to get screwed in a playoff series at some point in time. I mean, but that's been part of the sport, right? I mean, there's people walking around in Toronto right now still thinking about Kerry Fraser missing a high sticking call in a playoff series in 1993. So, like,
public enemy number one.
I guess what I'm saying is that's almost 30 years ago, and people still have that in their mind. So I'm not sure officiating is any worse today, but I think it's definitely highly scrutinized. We have more and more camera angles, and we have, Twitter, let's call it Twitter isolates all these moments and blows them up, and it makes it seem like it's getting worse, but I'm not sure that's actually reflective of it being any worse than it's ever been.
Okay. All right. You've heard it here from CJ. Officiating is not, I don't know. Who knows?
Here's the thing. Part of being a fan is hating on the referees, right? Like, that's
yes, it is.
Like, I can't say so much in hockey, but like, I watch my Blue Jays and I'm always pissed about the umps and want robot umps. And, I notice like, I get it, but like, that's part of what sports is. So like, I'm not sitting here saying that you should like the refereeing, but I don't, the way that question is phrased. And I think I've seen this conversation a little bit on hockey Twitter. Like, is it getting worse? Like, I don't think it's any worse than it's ever been. I just think it's never going to be perfect. And that's always going to tick you off if you have an emotional investment in what's happening on the ice.
What about, could you imagine if we get to a point where we have robot referees in the NHL? That will probably never happen because the game's too fast. But like, unless they find a way to have like some kind of like drone, like hovering thing from the stands that oversees everything, and whenever they spot a call, like they blow a whistle or something.
That feels like 1984-esque a little bit. Like, it's like, like
brother,
like where you can't get away with anything. The whole ice is mapped. I mean, that's the other part about the sport, is it's meant to be played on the edge, right?
Yeah.
Like, I still remember even playing minor hockey. Like, you're trying to get away with things. Like, you're trying to impede other players. Obviously, you don't want to end up in the penalty box, but like, there's a reason. Yeah. I guess my point is things are going to be missed. It's not going to be perfect.
I guess my thinking is this, like, I don't mind like long video reviews or referees doing everything they can to get it right because of the margin of error that's there. And if there are opportunities to advance it to the point where it's like, hey, we can do everything to ensure that it's right. Whenever I hear the opposite, where it's like, it's going to happen with human error, I'm just like, no, because look, part of being a fan is hating the referees, right? And we can all account for human error until it happens to your team and it affects you greatly. Like, if my favorite team loses out on a playoff spot, for example, because of some bad call, it's very hard for me to just throw my hands up in the air and be like, that's the way it goes. Them's the breaks. Like, right. I want that right.
I'm saying but like, I think that they're doing everything you could conceivably want. I mean, like, even in the years I've just been around the NHL, like, they have like referee training camps. They're recruiting former players. Like, they're getting younger and more fit, and people like creating pipelines to have top level referees. Like, I think I think they're doing what you can reasonably do and expect them to do to have the best possible product. I just think things are going to get missed, man.
Yeah.
And you can scream. Like, you're allowed to scream. Like, I'm not telling the fans not to scream.
Shake your fist.
But I would also just say, okay, step to the side and be like, how can this, it's never going to be perfect. It's just not.
Yeah, but you know what? I make this gripe all the time, so I'm just going to do it here. There's no reason why, if a referee gets a call that's bad, that like we shouldn't be able to hear from them. We should be able to hear from them in some way.
Of course, every sport's going that way. I spent part of my weekend watching the behind the scenes tennis documentary. Like, everything's going more behind the scenes and more like that would be a natural next step. I don't think it's coming to the NHL anytime soon, but it will come eventually.
Anyway, Steve, Dan, thank you for that question. Incited a very good discussion. Drew Brewer, which player was the nicest person you must have interacted with? Is it James, Soup, or an off-the-board pick? Don't forget to be awesome.
So that's James Reimer, I think he means.
That's my guess, yeah. He seems like a very nice guy.
Very, very nice guy. And remember, he got tossed into the Leafs crease sort of by accident, I would say. Like, he's had a remarkable career given what was expected of him back in those days. Like, I don't think anyone saw him being a 300 or 400 game NHL goaltender. So he kind of became a man of the moment at that time in Toronto, and he handled all of that as well as anyone could. Jack Campbell, Soup, he's as nice as you would imagine. I never saw anything to suggest otherwise. I mean, there's a lot of good players in this league, I have to say. I mean, Sidney Crosby might be the biggest gentleman that I've ever consistently, interacted with over the course of my career. And obviously he had much, much higher media demands placed on him than any player, maybe other than, I guess, him and Ovechkin were similar, but, and he just had made time for everyone and, really looked you in the eye, just treated you with respect. I think of like some random guys like Clark MacArthur was always great when he was in Toronto. Colby Armstrong, who's since become a friend of mine, was great with the media, was always hilarious and had fun.
He's funny.
With it. Yeah. Yeah. And there's tons of younger players too nowadays that fit that bill. Like, I think my main takeaway would be that there's very few jerks, like very, very few players that I would label even a pain to deal with. Like even guys like Phil Kessel, right, who had a certain reputation. Like, when you actually did get a proper chance to talk to him, like he was a nice guy. Like, I think he just didn't like doing it, and he certainly didn't like the big media scrum and all that stuff. And it kind of took on a life of its own for a period of time in Toronto. But like I never actually had any personal issue with him. Like, I actually quite liked talking to him when I got a chance to. It just was few and far between. So yeah, it's maybe not the answer. Like, there isn't one player that I'm like, this guy was awesome. Like, I'm like, most of these guys are awesome. And that remains the case. Like, a visiting team comes through and I'll walk in the room and not even know them or whatever. I had a great chat with Matty Beniers the other day, me and a couple of reporters, and, I don't know Matty, he doesn't know me, but like, he was just an awesome, thoughtful kid. So I think the truth is the sport's full of, people that have been wonderful to deal with, at least in my experience.
It's a great answer. How about this next one from Happy Canadian 55? Will Lou Lamoriello be general manager of the New York Islanders next year? They need some changes. Too old and slow. Loyalty costing them right now.
I think he will be. I mean, I don't see a scenario where he's fired. And
yeah, you want to fire Lou Lamoriello?
Well, I mean, it's happened before, sort of. I guess he was not renewed, or anyway, whatever that situation was. But I think he'll still be there. I do. And he does things his way. The Islanders do things their way. And I think, to be honest, it's been pretty effective. I know last year was a write-off, and this year maybe it's been a little bit up and down, but I think Lou will be there. I do.
Okay. Gen X Fletch. Are the Leafs really even in the discussion for Bo Horvat or Timo Meier? Seems like salaries, lack of draft capital, and prospect pool is working against them.
Well, and also I don't know that they want to give out to pay the kind of price that would be required for players on expiring deals. Now, it's not to say they wouldn't do it, but I think generally speaking, they have a debate internally about whether it's worthwhile. And so, I would expect that Bo Horvat and Timo Meier, when moved, are going to go for princely sums. And, I don't know the Leafs would make that kind of move for a player on a deal that ends in terms of giving up a first plus whatever it takes. So yeah, I don't see them as I wouldn't list the Leafs as the most likely destination for either of those players. Maybe it's a little lower cost when you get someone like Ryan O'Reilly, for example, might make sense in Toronto. Obviously the Leafs are going to look for any way they can improve. I think certainly a top 6 forward remains their main list on their shopping list. But no, I wouldn't list them as the favorites for the big dogs.
Okay. What about from Giant Pie 12 on Discord? Do you prefer a really good burger or a really good steak?
Ooh. I would say really good steak. I mean, yeah, really good steak, but I really like a really good burger too. So what's the common denominator here? I'm a carnivore.
Like you meat. Yes, you are.
I'm a carnivore. So
what's your favorite burger place?
I'm not loyal to one, to be honest. I don't have Burgers Priest in Toronto. I like, they got a few different locations. Someone's told me, actually, my buddy Jonas Siegel covers the Maple Leafs for The Athletic, is a big burger aficionado, which you would not have him labeled for that because he looks like a jockey. He's very svelte, fit young man.
Yeah,
but,
he does.
He's told me he always has opinions on the best burger in this city and that city. So there's one called Rudy in Toronto I'm going to try at some point, but I haven't had it yet. But I've heard it's a good burger. But get at me in the comments, because if you feel passionately, I'm willing to try your best burger joint, because I can appreciate a good burger.
Maddie's Patties. The last time I was in Toronto, I hung out with Dom at The Athletic. We enjoyed some burgers at Maddie's Patties. It was very good. I would recommend that. And I've been told Bookie's Burgers in Calgary is supposedly really good. I have not tried that yet. So at some point I will do that, and I will report back with my findings.
Love it.
2 more questions for you. Vinit on Discord. Hope the surgery went well, CJ. Did the run streak survive?
The run streak has survived. I didn't miss a day.
How many days?
Today is day 993.
Okay, we should do something for day 1000. I'm not sure what we should do. We should do something.
I mean, it's next Tuesday, so January 24th is 1,000, and it's been on my radar for a while, because it just feels like it's a big round number, and it's kind of preposterous to think that happened. Because I actually was for some reason on New Year's, it hit me. I was I went the last 8 months, give or take, of 2020, all of 2021, and all of 2022. And then now a couple more weeks. And that's what it takes to get to 1,000. So that's a long time of not missing a day.
That's
but it was never really in jeopardy, if I'm being honest. The only thing I'm a little nervous about now is that because it's slippery outside, if I was to fall, I would not want to brace myself with my right hand.
No.
Because that could probably do some, as I said, I'm at the point I'm having trouble lifting a coffee pot with it. So I really wouldn't want the force of my own weight hitting down on the ice on that or something. So I've been really careful when I've gone. I'm not going too fast, but I've still kept going every day.
Yeah, be careful when you run out. I don't know if you're wearing proper footwear. I don't want to sound like a.
I am wearing proper I'm wearing proper footwear. I mean, I've got my winter, what I need, locked in. I can do it safely, but I have fallen. I fell once last year, just slipped on ice. There's no damages to me, but unfortunately, I had my cell phone in the pocket on the side I fell on and cracked the screen. I had to get a new phone. So yeah. So again, I've gone down once or twice. And so I'm very conscious that I would use my left hand to cushion the fall if I were to tumble now.
Last one from Florida man, Matt Maroon. CJ Super Bowl predictions.
Ooh, I want to say the Cowboys, but I've already said in this episode, I don't think they're winning the first game of the playoffs. So
you don't believe in them.
No, I mean, like they laid an egg the last week of the season. I don't know. They're just so frustrating. I'm going to say the Buffalo Bills ride the emotion of everything that they've been through. I know they barely got through Miami on the weekend, but I think the Bills are winning the Super Bowl. And I'm going to say they beat the Eagles.
You heard it here first, people. Buffalo versus Philadelphia in the Super Bowl, according to one Chris Johnston. Thank you for the questions. Thank you, CJ, for always being a great sport with the questions. And as always, thank you for just being you and going through another edition of the Chris Johnston Show. We've made it through another Monday edition.
We did, and I didn't even fly to Tampa. Let's see if I regret that. We'll see if I regret that.
I'm telling you, I'm gonna be watching that Monday Night Football game now, and if it's a very good game, like if we're talking like a classic, you're gonna know about it.
Like Tom throws like 5 TDs for the Bucks, but still somehow the Cowboys prevail in overtime.
Man, could you imagine a year where like the Cowboys do well and like the Leafs do well? Like there are people who exist in that Venn diagram of like Cowboys and Leafs fans, and like if they see playoff success in the same year, they might like spontaneously combust.
I mean, it's too soon to know what's going to happen in the NHL. I think like we still have half a season.
We do. We absolutely do. Does that?
I mean I'm pretty confident in saying Boston's going to have the best regular season, but then like who knows what happens in the playoffs, right? It's a crazy sport. Like quite often teams that have had monster regular seasons lose in round one. They do. And I should be very clear. I'm not predicting that for Boston. Like I just don't know what's going to happen. I mean, that's part of what makes the Stanley Cup playoffs so compelling. The NFL, I think, tends to be a little more predictable. Is that fair? Like I think the best team generally wins in the NFL.
Yeah. You might get a surprise team. Like, I mean, the Bengals, I don't think anyone expected them to make the Super Bowl last year, but the Rams with the way they went all in, like that made sense.
Right. I mean, I probably should have picked KC to win the Super Bowl. I don't know.
No, I think the Bills was a good move because they've been a Super Bowl favorite like all year.
Yeah. And I had Josh Allen on my fantasy team. He helped win me a championship. And so he's my ride or die if the Cowboys can't have success. So always cheering for him. Seems like a great dude.
Yeah. We'll have to wait and see with that, but we'll be back on Thursday with a brand new episode. We will have stick taps then and other fun stuff. For CJ, I'm Julian saying so long. Enjoy your Monday and peace.
Go Cowboys.
The Chris Johnston Show.
Powered by Sports Interaction. Want to bet?
Inside the Game, twice a week. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris. And follow Julian McKenzie @JKMcKenzie.
The Chris Johnston Show.